Dr. Rajgopal, first, can you straighten your microphone out? Let me just be very clear. Bend it like this so it's dead straight towards your mouth. Thank you. As far as I can tell, and I'm really on the struggle bus here, what Republicans seem to want is they don't want companies or investment managers to use ESG. Why?
Ask them. I don't know. I would imagine, as I said earlier, if there are signals that inform your view of future cash flows and risks, as a fiduciary, you would actually fail in your responsibility if you didn't look at those signals.
Right. So, I mean, investment managers have fiduciary duties to make good investments. If they find ESG useful, then they find ESG useful. And if you disagree with them and you think they're mismanaging your money, sue them. What am I missing here?
Or short the stock. You don't even have to sue them, right? I mean, if you have a view that just short the stock, make money, you can be an activist, right? That's how capital markets work, and that's where the discipline comes from.
Right. So I'm really struggling here to understand what Republicans want to have happen. Are they, from your understanding here, it seems like what they want is they want companies to do things that they like. I too, by the way, would like companies to do things that I like. And I sometimes choose to invest in companies whose practices I like more. But Ms. McClain, my colleague on the other side of the aisle, is saying that if companies want to use ESG, they should be free to do it. Did you hear her say that?
I thought so, yeah.
Then what is the point of this hearing? I too, I'm with Ms. McClain. I think companies should be free to decide for themselves whether ESG practices are beneficial to their bottom line and their business model and help them attract customers or don't. I too think that asset managers should be free to decide that ESG data helps them make good valuation decisions and good investment decisions. And if they don't, they should be able to ignore it. I honestly, I can't believe this is part two of when part one was actually the stupidest hearing I've ever been to, and now we're having a part two. Please, God, let there not be a part three. Dr. Rajgopal, is it better for pension fund managers to have more options for investing people's retirement savings, or is it better if they have fewer options?
More, obviously.
What is a pension fund manager's primary responsibility?
To make sure that they can deliver a return commensurate with the pension benefits that have actually been promised to their workers.
Great. Will limiting pension fund managers' investment options increase retirement savings?
Not that I can think of.
But and by the way, you are not just thinking about it. The Kansas Division of Budget did a study. They found that limiting pension fund managers' investment options would cost the retirement system $3.6 billion in reduced returns over 10 years. When we cut off companies and asset managers from choices, investors lose money. We are sacrificing the freedom to invest, and we are all poorer. We're poorer because we have fewer choices, and we're literally poorer because we have lower returns. In 2021, the Texas state government passed a law prohibiting municipalities from signing loans with banks that they believe boycott fossil fuel companies, I believe also guns. Is it better for municipalities to have more options for loans or fewer options for loans?
It's a simple supply-demand kind of issue. If you cut off a few suppliers of a product or a service, and if demand stays constant, the price of that good or service goes up.
Thank you. I yield back. I'd like to start by recognizing a Postal Service letter carrier in my district named B. Lee. For 38 years, B has connected constituents to their essential medicines, ballots, notes from loved ones. With so many hospitals and medical offices on her route, she is proud that her work helps keep our communities healthy and safe. As we discuss ways to improve the federal workforce, I want us all to remember that federal employees are dedicated public servants and valued members of our communities. I thank my constituent B for her years of service to Orange County. Second, I want to take up a partial response to what my colleague, Ms. Boebert, was discussing. VPN, she mentioned an article alleging that 25% of HHS employees did not actually telework. And I just want to flag for everyone here that VPN and using VPN login as a way to measure employee engagement and productivity is notoriously inaccurate and misleading. It does not necessarily reflect an employee's access to their email, the internet. They can be working on Microsoft Word, drafting a document. They can be in Excel, inputting data without being connected to the internet at all, much less to VPN. It also fails to reflect the work of the thousands of doctors, researchers, scientists, and other HHS employees who spend much of their time working in the field, not logged onto a computer. I'd now like to turn to an area that I've worked on before, which is...
Would my colleague just real quick yield?
Real quick.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if VPN is required,
Correct.
by the way. Thank you.
Correct. I want to turn to an issue I've worked on before, which is wildland firefighter classification. We know that wildfire in California get worse and worse each year. We don't even talk about a season anymore. It's an all-year-round risk. And we owe our wildland firefighters debts of gratitude for what they do. Director, would you agree that achieving equity across the wildland firefighter workforce is an important goal?
Absolutely, Congresswoman.
So we should expect that wildland firefighters who do the same work to have the same job descriptions, pay, benefits, et cetera. Would you agree?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so as you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law directed coordination between OPM and the Departments of Interior and Agriculture on developing a distinct job series for federal wildland firefighters. And the goal here is to accurately describe their duties and what they should be paid for the hard work that they do. Last June, OPM issued guidance for developing this job series, which includes employees in the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and National Park Service, 5 agencies. Is OPM facilitating interagency coordination on this classification process to make sure that it's completed properly and fairly?
Thank you, Congresswoman. We are. We helped with the, like you mentioned, the job series, and now we're working through the classification, the occupation series, and now working through the classification aspect of it.
And you feel that OPM is would you characterize your role here as hands-on in helping the agencies come to consistent descriptions?
Absolutely. We do see that as our role to ensure continuity. We also want to make sure that we see as our role to ensure there's a career path and trajectory for firefighters.
Wonderful, because we don't want the U.S. Forest Service to end up short of people because BLM has a different classification. We want all of these agencies to have the ability to have trained and skilled wildland firefighters to keep us all safe. Can you talk a little bit about whether you have worked with federal wildland firefighters directly to get their input to make sure that what the agencies are doing, what those in Washington or field offices might be doing, matches what's happening on the ground, the challenges that our firefighters are facing?
Absolutely, Congresswoman. We have what I would hope is a good relationship with the associations and unions that support the firefighters. I had the opportunity to meet them in person and hear firsthand about just some really challenging stories about how they're managing just their livelihood with the current pay. And so we want to ensure, as a part of our role, not only this occupation, but to ensure that the pay is a permanent feature that's now through the BIL, but will expire soon.
Wonderful. I just want to encourage OPM to continue taking a leadership role so that we don't have agencies acting kind of independently and leave the wildland firefighters with the short end of the stick here. I want to use my remaining time. Has OPM We hear so much about the costs of federal employees, the costs of their wages, the costs of their benefits. Has OPM formally studied the costs of recruiting and training for when employees leave? Can we weigh the cost of paying an existing trained, qualified, excellent employee, which we hear a lot about? What does it cost us when that person leaves to get a new person and to train them to the same level?
Absolutely. There are significant costs when it comes to recruitment and also retention, the knowledge that you've lost and getting that person up to speed, Congresswoman. I do know that there have been a documentation at individual agencies. I'd have to check to see if our agency has done something across government.
I would really encourage that as a way of making sure we have all of the data so that we can come to the right conclusions as we think about workforce issues. So I would encourage you to think about how to make that more of an initiative and how to coordinate that data across agencies. I thank Mr. Chairman and yield back.
Lady yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Burleson from Missouri for 5 minutes.
Thank you. First, I want to say you look very healthy for someone that was up until 3 a.m. last night. Thank you, Director, for coming. I wanted to say it's clear from this hearing.
Thank you. We have Ms. Porter now.
Ms. Coates, the Republican majority invited you here today as a witness. In your own words, what are the Republicans interested in learning from this hearing?
Well, thank you very much, Congresswoman, for that question and for the bipartisan participation in this committee hearing today. I do echo Mr. Goldman's comments about getting to a good bipartisan spot on Iran that is focused on the national security interests of the American people, which I think all of us take very seriously. I think the questions, as I understand them from the majority on this committee, is an exploration of what's been going on now for well over.
So what is the administration's Iran policy?
What is the Iran policy? What has been negotiated in Vienna? What is being agreed to potentially as a new deal? And I certainly think questions about the status of the former special envoy, given how opaque the State Department has been about that, are valid on the part of the American people.
Okay. So, Ms. Coates, we want to evaluate the Biden administration's policy toward Iran, and it has these different components that you just started into. We can't evaluate the policy until we know what it is, and that seems like a big part of the frustration and the issue here. So we want to know what the president's policies are on Iran, and can you name some of the areas that we might want to know about? Like, I'm interested in nuclear proliferation. How about you?
Nuclear proliferation is always a concern.
Okay, anything else?
I think sponsorship of terrorism.
Okay, terrorism. Anything else?
I would say repression of the Iranian people.
Okay.
Expansion of the missile program.
Yep.
Potential weaponization of elements that they're using in space.
You said the one before this was a missile program.
Export of conventional arms to Russia.
Arms export.
Particularly Russia for Ukraine.
Okay, so there's a lot of good stuff here. Where can the people find an official statement of the administration's policy toward Iran that covers some of these topics?
I mean, you could go to the State Department website.
What will you learn?
You will learn that the State Department frequently says things that sound good to the American people, but they don't take actual actions. And I think you could go back to, for example, lifting the foreign terrorist organization designation from the Houthi in Yemen. There's a statement about that on the website of the State Department.
I know, just reclaiming my time for a second, I know that President Obama had a statement of policy about Syria during his administration. Do we have a similar statement of policy from President Biden about Iran?
Well, given that the statement of the Obama administration, among other things, prohibited the use of chemical weapons.
No, I know. I'm not asking whether you agree or disagree with it. Let me ask Ms. Slavin, do we have that kind of statement?
I mean, I agree that they have statements on the State Department website about Iran.
Okay, so that right now, though, there is no comprehensive overview document of the Biden administration's policy on Iran.
Not that answers my questions.
Okay, so it would be easier to evaluate the policy if we knew what they were.
and if they would answer questions about it.
Okay, so would it surprise you that Republican leadership blocked my bipartisan amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act that would have gotten us all, on both sides of the aisle, a report about all of the president's policy toward Iran? This is actually, so you can look for yourselves, this is exactly what my amendment would have done. The president shall submit to Congress a report which may contain a classified annex outlining the policy of the United States with respect to human rights, nuclear proliferation, the ballistic missile program, and regional terrorism in Iran. All issues that you said were things you would like to know about. Why would Republicans block this?
Well, I applaud your confidence in reporting requirements as an effective way of policy oversight. I would say that I simply would not necessarily object to a report, but a report isn't going to get us the answers that we need.
Well, it's going to get us more than we've got right now,
but
which is nothing.
That's on the administration, ma'am.
Yes, but this, with all due respect, we do oversight of the administration. This amendment orders the administration to give us answers, including those with classified information if necessary, on the very topics that you identified as important. So I guess what my frustration here is, the Republicans have called this hearing, and I'm in full support of wanting more information about the Iranian regime. I represent a huge Iranian American population in my district. But they blocked an amendment that would have been a tool to begin to force the administration to give us this information. I yield.
Thank you. As is Ms. Porter for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Chief Modlin and Chief Chavez for sharing your stories today. And one of the things I particularly wanted to acknowledge and appreciate about your testimony, Chief Modlin, is you acknowledged that our borders are not monoliths. You have served, both of you, in many different parts and pockets of our border, and the challenges that we face are different. And I appreciate you taking the time to acknowledge that, and I hope that my colleagues will recognize that the challenges we face in rural areas like RGV and Tucson are different than what we face in coastal borders and areas like San Diego sector. I wanted to focus on fentanyl and continue the line of questioning of the chairman. I want to introduce, with permission, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce into evidence this chart, which is based on Customs and Border Patrol data. And I know it's hard to see, but I think you can probably see if you look at the screen. This big jump, this is fentanyl seized at the border. There's a big jump here, and that big jump occurred around June 2020, August 2020. Mr. Modlin, did anything happen then that caused any policy procedure change that caused that big jump in fentanyl seizures?
Ma'am, thank you for the question. And what I will say is that I very much appreciate the beginning of your statement about the variety of the border. And what I would say is we're always grateful when any members come down and see the border. And what I would certainly emphasize is that if you've seen one Border Patrol sector, you've only seen one Border Patrol sector. And what's going on in Tucson is vastly different than what's going on in RGV. As to that jump, I'm unaware of what that jump is, ma'am.
Have you seen data like this suggesting that there's been an increase in fentanyl seizures?
Yes.
Ms. Chavez, do you have any, Chief Chavez, do you have any, are you aware of this jump in seizures, and do you have any explanation for why in about June, July, August 2020, we saw this big increase?
I do not have knowledge of that chart in particular, but we are aware that fentanyl seizures have gone up. I just don't have specific information related to that chart.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up in writing to ask about this, because I think what's interesting about this is, of course, we had a change in president in 2020 and some changes in border policy. And what we can see here is that the facts show we are seizing a lot more fentanyl. And for me, as a mom, that is a sign of success. I don't want that fentanyl in this country. It is dangerous, and it kills people, and it makes our communities dangerous. And to me, this is a sign that our Border Patrol and our agents at our ports of entry, which is, of course, where the vast majority of the fentanyl is seized, as you've acknowledged, are doing their jobs. What I find interesting is, despite success here, what we're hearing is an effort to characterize seizures as failures. And that is a change. So what we've seen from my colleagues is tweets that say, over 800 pounds of fentanyl seized. This is Biden's border crisis. That's a tweet from Rep. Stefanik. To me, the fact that you're seizing these drugs is a success. So I think that there's a need here to acknowledge the successful work that you're doing, and I appreciate that. I wanted to ask, as Border Patrol agents, distinguished from those who work at ports of entry doing inspection, are we focusing enough energy and resources on detection and staffing at ports of entry? Because I have been to San Ysidro. I have seen the volume of cars, pedestrians that they are trying to process in a day. The more we do at ports of entry to halt smuggling of fentanyl, does that push it into more dangerous sectors and out into the border areas where you are? In other words, we're squeezing one part of it down, doing more with detection, with technology, X-ray. Is that then pushing people into these more dangerous, different tactics? Mr. Moodlin, do you have thoughts on this, Chief Moodlin?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks again. So first, if you don't mind, I'm just going to circle back real quick to the spike in fentanyl, because sometimes answers come to me a little later than they probably should. But I would say that perhaps that is also because of the recognition of fentanyl, getting the canines trained to detect fentanyl. I mean, I would look at certainly when we started to see fentanyl and that, and then, of course, the technology to detect it as well. In terms of the ports, what I will tell you is that I doubt there's anybody working in CBP's Office of Field Operations that would say they don't need more people and technology as well as the Border Patrol, but certainly I would defer that to our headquarters. But what I will say is that your point is exactly right. What happens at the ports affects outside the port. So, criminals are always going to go to the path of least resistance. And if the ports are the path of least resistance, they will go there. If between the ports are there, they'll go there. And ultimately, it's not our concern who's trafficking the fentanyl, just that we keep it out of the country so that all of us parents feel safe and know that it's not going to be in our kids' schools.
I appreciate that, Chief, and I would just say the big jump here is coming from the ports of entry. The Border Patrol has been relatively consistent in the amount of fentanyl, so we're clearly doing something much more effectively at our ports of entry to seize fentanyl, and I would just urge the chairman in the spirit of bipartisanship to suggest that we bring in some of our ports of entry officers so we can hear about the technologies and the things that they are doing that are resulting in these kinds of successes. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Chair Rick.
Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for a race featuring a motley crew of desperate losers and shameless con artists. It's a spectacle so astonishingly lacking in integrity that you won't believe your eyes. And off they go, with Nikki the diplomatic Gillette and Haley prancing around like a phony diplomat who can't even negotiate a discount at the local market. But wait, here comes former guy Trump desperately trying to relive past glories and making promises that only a true master of deception could conjure up. Will this towering ego get him across the finish line? Chris the Bridge to know where Christie is lagging behind. His Two-Face is still stuck in the traffic of his own failed political career. And Pensive Pence remains as indecisive as ever, pondering if he should even be in this race. But lo and behold, a hold it says to the Arkansas alibi. Hutchinson desperately clinging to his southern charm, hoping to distract you from his questionable track record and boring ass of bullshit. Meanwhile, Ron the catastrophic clown, DeSantis is causing pandemonium at every turn, proving that being an utter disaster can still gain you supporters in the world of politics. Will he woke off before the final furlong? Then there's Tim Nice with Deceptive Scott, the slick talker who's more concerned with appearances than substance, willing to spin any tale that'll get him a vote. And former guy Trump, of course, reappears with his endless stream of falsehoods like a snake oil salesman hawking miracle cures. But hold on to your sanity, folks, because here comes Vivek, the vexing visionary Ramaswamy, Cupid's stunt horse in this race of charlatans. He's peddling innovation and fresh ideas like a true snake oil salesman. And who knows what kind of bizarre venture he'll announce before the race is over. As they stumble toward the finish line, who is going to be the front runner to appear Fox Daily pushing out lies and fears? The crowd can hardly contain their disbelief. It's a spectacle like no other, a parade of desperate losers and shameless liars vying for your attention and, more importantly, your vote, then instantly forgetting you exist. Son, we need someone? Anyone I can't spot?